Today, we are discussing calibration protocols for assessment. And we are doing this as a fairness and reliability process. We're not trying to make everyone think exactly alike. We're actually building shared expectations, so scores are based on evidence from the standard, not hidden preferences. Two teachers can both care deeply about students and still score differently if they're using different mental criteria. Calibration makes those criteria visible. It helps the team say, this is what proficient evidence looks like for this standard. Calibration supports fairness, reliability, and instructional decision making because teachers are looking at the same evidence through the same standards aligned lens. Before we score, we return to the standard. If teachers jump straight into scoring, they often default to what they personally value: length, grammar, neatness, voice, or effort. Those qualities may matter in some context, but calibration starts by asking, what evidence does the standard actually require? Remember that unclear evidence expectations lead to unclear scoring decisions. The protocol is an easily repeatable PLC routine. Name the evidence, score silently, compare scores, discuss the evidence, set an anchor score, and team agreements. The purpose is not to talk forever about one paper or assignment. The purpose is to create a shared scoring lens quickly and clearly. This routine gives teachers a practical process they can use with common assessments throughout the year. The evidence of mastery statement becomes quite significant in the calibration process. Let's quickly review it and notice the highlighted items in pink. Students demonstrate mastery when they can accurately identify argumentative techniques, thoughtfully evaluate their effectiveness, and independently apply or revise those techniques to strengthen an argument for a specific audience. If we agree this is what mastery looks like, what should we actually see in student work? Notice the intended quick look fors: accurate identification of techniques or appeals, explanation of impact on audience, purpose or central idea, evaluation supported with evidence, strategic application, revision, or reflection. Remember that the evidence of mastery statement keeps scoring anchored to the standard rather than to personal preferences. Silent scoring does matter. If the group discusses the sample before scoring, teachers may begin adjusting their judgment toward the first opinion they hear. Silent scoring protects independent professional judgment. Be familiar with teacher directions here. Read the student sample independently. Mark evidence connected to the rubric. That's very important. Assign your score. Write one sentence explaining your score. Use the stem for simplicity. I scored this as blank because the student evidence shows blank, which matches the rubric language of, and then explain the rubric language. A reminder that silent scoring prevents the loudest voice from becoming the rubric. At this stage, score differences are information. They are not a problem to defend or a disagreement to win. Do not begin with who is right. Instead, ask, where did we agree? Where did scores differ by more than one level? What evidence did each scorer notice? What evidence may have been overlooked? Explain that score differences often reveal where rubric language or evidence expectations need clarification. At this point, I want to model productive calibration language. Calibration does not remove professional judgment. It makes professional judgment visible and defensible. Teachers must adapt in replacing opinion-based statements with evidence-based statements. For example, instead of I liked it, the language should say, the student meets the criterion based because the response explains how the appeal influences the intended audience. Instead of saying it simply just feels like a 3, the language should say the evidence supports a 3 because the student evaluates the technique and supports that evaluation with specific reasoning. Be sure to always reinforce the team norm. Every scoring claim must point to student evidence and rubric language. At this point, the agreed upon score becomes an anchor sample the team can return to during later scoring. The team should record the final agreed score, the evidence that supports the score, evidence that is missing or only partially present, and why the sample does not belong at the level above or below. Then your team should create brief scoring agreements. Some examples might include: a response must explain the impact on audience in order to meet the DOK2 expectation. Or consider something like this: a student must evaluate effectiveness and support that evaluation in order to demonstrate DOK3 evidence. Write these agreements down. They are what supports scoring and remaining consistent after the meeting ends. Let's use these 4 student responses as a quick practice activity. Read each response and identify what level of evidence is present. You may pause the video here to work on this activity. Use the handout provided in the module. Now let's look at some possible answers. DOK1 response. The author uses pathos, so this student identifies the appeal. This is foundational evidence, but it does not yet show analysis or evaluation. The DOK2 response. The author uses pathos by describing an exhausted student, which makes parents feel concerned. This student identifies the appeal and explains its effect on the audience. DOK3 response. The pathos is effective for parents, but the argument would be stronger with expert evidence to build ethos. This student evaluates effectiveness, considers audience, and justifies a judgment. The DOK4 response. After comparing mentor text, I revise my own argument by balancing pathos with expert testimony and statistics for school leaders. This student transfers understanding, revises strategically, and reflects on audience-based choices. Let's discuss this. Which response is foundational? Which response begins to demonstrate mastery? And which response would be strongest evidence for a summative task? Which level matches the intended rigor of our assessment? Take some time to discuss these things. Connect the discussion back to the standards progression from identification and explanation to evaluation, strategic application, and revision. Let's close by emphasizing that calibration does not need to take an entire planning day. A brief calibration routine used consistently is more powerful than any one giant calibration meeting held once a semester. Let's walk through the sample agenda. 5 minutes. Take some time, return to the standard and evidence of mastery. Taking 5 minutes, you should review the rubric and scoring look-fors. Take 10 minutes to score one sample silently. Take the next 10 minutes to compare scores and discuss evidence. Use a timer. 5 minutes, set an anchor score. And then the next 5 minutes and the final 5 minutes, record scoring agreements and the next steps. Let's close with this takeaway. Calibration is how PLCs turn scoring from private judgment into shared evidence-based practice. As a PLC team, I challenge you to leave the process with one agreed upon anchor sample, one clear scoring agreement they will use immediately, and be sure to check out the handout created specifically for PLC calibration and documentation. Thank you.